On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. Media bias, lies, deception, everything that's happened through this. Fox Media was bought back in March of 2019 by Disney. I think we've seen how anybody that's actually paying attention to Fox is seeing how they've kind of started to slant and skew their daytime popularity of Republican candidates. And they've started to really kind of move in that left direction. Now, obviously, MSNBC, CNN, and all ABC, all these other CBS, all these other major organizations have been on the left and proudly so for a long time. And it made me think, I'm like, wow, after all of this, who are we going to trust? Literally, like this, there was this like weird void. Like I did typically have Fox on during the day, and it has become so difficult over the past week and a half that I've literally been leaving it off during the day. And there's almost this void. Like, it's kind of nice to have the news in the background. It's kind of nice to feel like I was finding out some information, but it's really not nice to find out they've been deceptive. They've been a little incorrect in their information. I mean, Phoenix is a great example, right? Or Arizona. Everyone's talking about Arizona. Fox, AP, I think Washington Post or Times, one of those guys, have already called it. And there is a huge amount of information to suggest that's not true, and yet they still refuse to uncall it. They're still sticking to their guns. There is a very strange thing that's happening. No matter how we slice and dice it, roughly 50% of the nation voted one way, 50% of the nation voted another. It's going to be a really close race, I don't think, no matter how you slice it. Some areas certainly going to skew, in other areas it skews the other way. But ultimately, overall, across the nation, about half of us are pro-Trump, half of us are pro-Biden, or at least pro-left, right? And we have to learn to get along with each other without a doubt. But we also have to figure out, who are we going to trust? How are we going to move forward? Now, there's channels like mine. There's channels like this that are all over. But are we allowed to be fully honest? I think a lot of us question that. Certainly a lot of us got struck down and lost our channels for a week, maybe longer for some. And oddly, the timing of it was about a week and a half before the election. So these things hugely impacted the way this game was played out, and it seems oddly coordinated. So again, having and finding places to trust of information is going to be questionable. Obviously, this whole Q thing is really up in the air right now because it's really going to be dependent how a lot of these things play out, I think, as far as anybody trusting any of this stuff ever again. And right now, that's my point. I think trust is at an absolute all-time low. Absolute all-time low right now. People are not trusting at all. Now, one thing that Biden's talking about, and I think this is the other really crucial thing to call out, is this is about billions and trillions of dollars, really, of funds that get dispersed all over the place and certainly into a lot of politicians' pockets. I can't prove that, somewhat speculative, but we know that pallets of money were given to Iran. We know like money's been all over the place. So this Paris Climate Accord is a very expensive accord and also sets some somewhat reasonably unfair goals for this country and the speed to which it needs to go to completely green power. And really the only way this country, our country, can do that is to offshore manufacturing, so then we technically aren't creating these greenhouse gases within our own borders. Problem is, it's for our own businesses and it's still for us Americans, so we're just outsourcing the pollution to another country. And you know what? We all have the same air. So there's a lot of weirdness around this, and I think Trump wants to bring back the manufacturing here, which is what made us great back during World War II. And I'm actually very pro. Like right now, coal stacks here in the United States are some of the cleanest in the world. In fact, the air coming out of the stacks at the top has been so heavily cleaned and purified that it's clean. It's just air. It's amazing. We supposedly have the cleanest coal in the world as far as the way we burn it. Now, not all of it's, free of sulfur and all those other things. So again, a vastly complex problem. First thing Biden wants to do is get us back into higher taxes. I want to give a bunch of your money away. I'm probably going to maybe keep some of it myself. Like, I don't know. Who knows what crazy promises he's going to make. But again, back to the trust question. I personally, just knowing all the stories that started popping up around his son, his family, his brother, his sister, his daughter's diary, maybe, like so much information's come out that's made me really question this family. And to think we get stuck. I mean, are we going to immediately just impeach the next president that comes in because he's got all sorts of slime on him? Like, is that the thing we're going to do, is we'll put a president in office and then immediately impeach him and be like, all right, let's keep moving forward, business as usual? Again, and what is usual anymore? Right now, Pennsylvania's county has just stopped counting over 35,000 uncounted mail-in ballots until tomorrow. And some of you might be like, no, why? Well, actually, the Right Scoop's kind of doing a great job, and they have a couple really good stories. But the reason they're saying this is because the Supreme Court has asked the Democrats to respond to Trump's Pennsylvania mail-in ballot filing by tomorrow. And I think this one's the one that extends the date to which you can still get votes in the mail. Like, the voting day ended on the day of the voting. You can't just extend it out indefinitely. And we're going to be taking votes until next month or next week or next year. What? No. Voting day was the voting day, and early voting's early voting. There's no late voting. That's new. You're trying to make up rules. That seems strange. Now, will it just totally help them one way or the other? I don't know, but it's still goofy. And it's creating problems where maybe, I mean, I've got some evidence of it, but votes seem to be kind of showing up in some random places and not cool. All right, doubled this story. Nice. Now, another thing that's interesting, again, we were talking about Arizona. And it's still, to this moment, it's not over. There are reporting errors. It's still early. And you've got places like Fox and AP and these other news agencies that have already called it. Arizona's called. Arizona's Biden. And it's like, not looking like that so much. My buddy lives in Nevada. He was just telling me, we got off our morning stand-up, which was great because it gave me a chance to film this video. But we got off our stand-up, and he's like, hey, I'm going to hop on. I want to see the news. Supposedly Nevada is going to be announcing the way our vote went. So, I mean, again, this is awesome how it's engaging to people, but at the same time, it's somewhat putting us on hold and certainly on edge. We had some interesting conversations as a team this morning. It was kind of fun. But again, Arizona is not necessarily called yet. Sean Davis is saying on a conference call earlier this morning, the Trump campaign manager, Bill Stapien, said that when all of the votes are counted in Arizona, Trump will win by 25 to 30,000 votes. Since Fox News inexplicably called the state for Biden last night, Trump has cut Biden's margin in half. So again, there's a lot of questions as to the authenticity of the information we get from our mainstream media, the press that was always supposed to defend the people, that were always here to make sure they rooted out and ferreted out any evil doings by anybody, especially political parties. Well, no, only certain political parties. One side, not so much. Now, one place where they're calling it obvious fraud, it's Mike Adams again, so, a lot of sprinkle some salt on this always, but I believe there's some factual evidence here that's probably hard to disagree with. But apparently 7 of Milwaukee's wards are reporting that there are more votes than total registered voters. That seems mathematically impossible. Even new registered, even already registered, maybe even registered dead people possibly, but they're still registered voters. Somehow they managed to get more votes than even that, which seems hard because you kind of got to register to vote to be able to vote. That's sort of how that game's played. So again, more examples of where there's questions. I'm not saying there is fraud. I'm not saying there's not fraud. But what I am saying is there's a lot of places around that seem to have some questions. Arizona's Attorney General, speaking of questions, I don't know if you guys had heard about the little Sharpie ballot complaint. And fortunately, their Attorney General is going to do an inquiry into that. Now, does it happen quick enough to make a difference? I don't know. Am I a little lacking faith and trust right now? Yes, I will be totally honest. I'm really curious to see how this plays out. I'm really curious to see who's actually looking out for the truth and for the people. I am all about the truth. Whoever honestly truly wins, that's great. We will move forward. I will kumbaya with you all day long. But I want to know that I can trust that, and right now, I can't. I've got media that lies to me. I've got government agencies that lie to me. We spent 2+ years trying to impeach a man for something that we couldn't get. We couldn't pin Russia on him. So then we bust him for a phone call where he wannabe quid pro quo happened. It wasn't even close. And then we've got the guy who's possibly going to win for the Democrats, who straight up did quid pro quo with his, you're not going to get your $1 billion if you don't fire him. That's quid pro quo. That is, you don't do something, you don't get the money. Don't understand why that's okay. Definitely two sides to this. So, Sharpie ballot. Apparently some people were given Sharpies in some of these voting places, or a specific place. I don't know how widespread it was. But the pens that they were giving people were Sharpies. and they were told to use the Sharpies to fill out their boxes. Well, apparently the scanning machines, this is what I'm hearing. I don't work on these machines myself, but supposedly when you use the Sharpies, they don't work. Now, maybe it's because it bleeds through, maybe it's because it doesn't, but it doesn't seem to give accurate results. Now, normal ballpoint pens, blue and black ink, work perfectly, work like a champ. And what to me is interesting, again, is from an office supply standpoint. Now, granted, these are possibly people spending taxpayers' money, so why would they care what can save some money? But from the standpoint of office supplies, you know, like a box of 12 Sharpies or 8 Sharpies, 10, whatever comes in a box, is really expensive. That's almost like the price of like 25 to 30 just little cheap ballpoint pens, maybe 50. Sharpies aren't cheap. So the fact that they're handing out expensive pens that don't work instead of pens that do work and are cheap, and you could darn near throw them away after they use them so you don't have to clean them. Not that we should do that either, but again, questions. Don't understand why a lot of the information that's floating around out there is straight up wrong, straight up being misrepresented, not being talked about. There is a real push right now. Again, trillions of dollars at stake here. Trillions of dollars that used to get funneled into pet projects, people's pockets, roundabout ways anyways, certainly laundered, went out to foreign leaders in foreign lands. This money of ours, our taxpayer money, our money, like I'd love to see my taxes come down for once. Like our hard-earned money is being given to other people that are rich already. It's not like we're redistributing to poor people and then I've got to just like kind of have that little morality talk with myself. No, you're stealing my money and then giving it to other rich people. That's not okay. Now, speaking of fact-checking, apparently there was hundreds. This is just one more example. Again, just an example of a thing that's really happening in real life around this election, but hundreds of pro-Trump ballots have been recovered in rural Michigan City. Apparently they were kind of sitting off in some back room right here, Jordan Epperson. Over 500 mail-in ballots for Trump found dumped at the Maryville precinct in Michigan. Update, clerks has told the county Republican officials that the ballots were simply misplaced and accidentally not included in the results. This indicates either complete incompetence and negligent behavior or extreme voter fraud. Why is it a box of Trump ballots specifically? These are questions that somewhat need answers, but two, these are the things that, one, aren't being reported, and when they do get reported on these media sources like what you've got right now, when we're talking about it, now all of a sudden you're seeing, holy crap, there's a lot of examples of this. The guy I was talking to this morning on our team that's pretty heavy on the left. It's like, no, I mean, I just think it's made up. I think a lot of these people are talking just made up stuff about this voter fraud. They should just count the votes and let them lie where they may. And I'm like, well, there are a lot of examples of where maybe some votes are showing up magically. Maybe some votes are disappearing magically. It just seems strange. And oftentimes it seems conveniently against Trump. Like it almost always invariably seems to work against Trump. That's beyond coincidence. Way too many coincidences lined up with all of this stuff that people, it's just a coincidence. Really, the way the media's been lined up against them, the way that now the vote's been lined up, the way they're trying to pass laws that allow this to be even harder to get over and through. The fact that they're trying to pre-call states for Biden to make it look like Biden's actually winning when it may not be the case. I keep hearing stories about Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona, even possibly Nevada, but maybe Nevada's finally blue, North Carolina. All these places, Wisconsin even, there's a lot of questions around these. Like, all of these places are reasonably close, and it just seems like they're not calling it because they don't want to show points to Trump. And theoretically, mathematically speaking, Trump actually still mathematically has a very strong chance of winning. That's freaking people out too. And so again, there's more of this trying to misrepresent the facts. Now again, back to kind of what I was pointing out earlier. One of the biggest issues we have right now is that 50% of the population, roughly 50% of the population voted differently, have different views, and a lot of people came out to cast their votes. Now they do break apart in all sorts of different fun demographics, men and women, young and old. There's a lot of different ways to split stuff, right? And we, as a nation, have to figure out how to get along, how to work together, no matter who wins or loses. Again, I've talked about it before. Even if Biden wins, even if, and it's possible, it's certainly mathematically possible as well, even if Biden wins, we've put in a whole bunch of judges. We've put in 3 Supreme Court justices. We have the Senate. There's no way they can pack the courts. That will not get through the Senate. And there's no way that they can get rid of the filibuster. Again, the Senate will protect us. We're lucky on that one. So a lot of good things have happened. We've got all sorts of crazy laws that have been passed by states, certainly California gun laws, for example, that have been passed that are being overturned. I mean, the magazine one's one that's up there. There's the ammo one. There's a number of current, like this week even, I want to say like the 7th, there's actual hearings getting together. They've already decided who the judges are going to be. So there's a lot of things that are happening already that are hopefully attempting to give us our rights back. And that is going to be essential for us as a nation to move forward. Whatever happens on this election, again, right, wrong, indifferent, all sorts of crazy stuff we ultimately have to try to get along after this. We all do. And the one thing that's typically been consistent is the people on the right tend to be a lot more open, forgiving, and kind. The people on the left have dug some serious graves. Not graves, but they've dug some holes. And these holes they have dug, even though they blame Trump for being divisive, it's not Trump that's caused them to call people names and to point at people and to throw rocks from within their glass houses. It's their choice to do that. So there's a lot of purification that needs to kind of happen. And there's a lot of people that I think truly need to look in the mirror and really say, am I being all the things that I'm expecting others to be? This is a time for us all to grow. Now, do I hope Trump's winning? Yeah, I do, absolutely. I would love to see that, no question about it. I think that would be almost a waste for us to have gone through all the things we've gone through to get to where we're at right now to lose the prize. But I'm not going to be like the Democrats do and say we won, and I'm not going to be like the Democrats and say we've got this in the bag. No, I will not say it. I don't count my chickens until they hatch. So I want people to understand that we're still waiting for some eggs to hatch. There's a strong chance we have enough chickens, but they must hatch. Very important. Let's stay together. Let's stay united. United we are strong. United we are powerful. United as a nation, even blue and red. United we are strong. Where we go one, we go all. It's On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.